Have you ever imagined a day when clean air becomes a luxury? Something you long for, not something you live with. For millions in Bangladesh, that day is every day. Welcome to Dhaka, the capital of Bangladesh and the most polluted major city on Earth. Every morning, millions wake to the sound of coughing, the sting of smoke in their lungs, and a sky that hasn't been blue in years. Breathing here isn't just difficult, it's dangerous. The air carries more than dust. The cost of survival in a city growing too fast to breathe. Number 1. What's happening in Dhaka? Dhaka is not only battling polluted skies, but also the pressure of a population that keeps rising without pause. Each year, nearly 500,000 people arrive, hoping to build a future in the capital. The city, already dense and strained, is being asked to stretch beyond its limits to accommodate the hopes and needs of its newest residents. Among those arriving are young workers from rural towns, often bringing their aging parents to live with them. For many families, this is the only way to ensure proper care for the elderly. In a country where healthcare access in villages remains limited. But life in the capital can be overwhelming, especially for older generations. In 2025, Bangladesh recorded that more than 70% of all deaths were caused by non-communicable diseases such as heart attacks, strokes, and respiratory failure.
Now, as you can see,
experts have linked much of this to long-term exposure to polluted air and the stress of rapid urbanization. Mohammed Zaman, now 85, spent decades working at the Bangladesh Agricultural University in Mymensingh. After retiring, he moved to Dhaka, not because he wanted to, but because his children urged him to leave the village and live with them for safety and support. Zaman now spends most of his time in a small apartment with his son. His world revolves around the balcony, where he sits quietly and reads the newspaper, avoiding the chaos outside. "I feel tense when I go out," he explains. "The roads are packed with cars and rickshaws. The noise and movement make me feel like something could hit me at any moment." He remembers walking alone in his village without fear. In Dhaka, those days feel distant. "It's safer to stay inside," he adds. "There's no place to walk." Vendors block the footpaths, rickshaws crowd every corner, and the air outside makes it hard to breathe. For many elderly residents, staying indoors is no longer a preference. It has become a quiet form of protection from a city that never slows down, and an atmosphere that rarely forgives. You might think his fear sounds irrational, even a little absurd. But if you ever set foot in Dhaka, Bangladesh, you would understand why Zaman is afraid to go outside. Number 2. Breathtaking picture about Dhaka. In Dhaka, pollution isn't limited to the air. It seeps into every breath you take, drifts through every window you open, and clings to every small gesture of life on the street. Across the city, the streets are gridlocked with traffic. Old buses and three-wheelers continuously spew thick black smoke. Lintuk. Construction sites raise clouds of dust without control. And factories continue to burn through the night, most of them without any proper filtration systems. For millions of residents, this has become part of daily life. People no longer question the haze or the coughs coming from being busy figuring out how to live with it. Children wear masks, not because they are afraid of viruses, but because the air stings their throats on the way to school. The danger has become normal if it happens too many times, but the cost is written in numbers too large to ignore. In the year 2021, air pollution claimed more than 8 million lives across the globe. That means 1 in every 8 deaths worldwide was linked to toxic air. In South Asia, the toll is even more severe. 1 out of every 3 deaths in the region can be traced back to polluted air. Dhaka remains one of the most polluted capitals on the planet. Its air is a mix of soot from brick kilns, chemical fumes from unregulated factories, and dust kicked up by unchecked urban expansion. In recent years, the city has frequently topped the global charts for worst air quality. According to official data, Dhaka recorded an average air quality index of over 200 in the early months of the year 2025. On the 10th of February, the city reached a peak of 392, a level considered hazardous for everyone, regardless of age or health. For nearly a month, from late January to late February, residents lived under constant health risk. In those 4 weeks alone, Dhaka experienced 18 days of unhealthy air, 15 days of very unhealthy air, and 1 day classified as dangerous. More alarming still, the concentration of fine particles in the air, known as PM 2.5, reached 124 micrograms per cubic meter. That is 8 times higher than the World Health Organization's 24-hour safety limit, and 25 times higher than the recommended annual exposure level. For people living in Dhaka, the simple act of breathing has become a daily gamble. And in this silent battle, who will prevail? Our awareness or our ignorance stay with us until the end, and you just might find the answer. Number 3. MAWA'S story. And while the air continues to claim lives invisibly, another tragedy plays out in plain sight. One that begins not in factories or highways, but in the faces of children like MAWA. Just a few kilometers from the industrial zones, she walks the narrow paths of a slum built along Dhaka's railway tracks. MAWA is only 11 years old, but her days are filled not with learning, but with pleading. She begs at busy intersections near train stations and outside shops, hoping someone will spare a few coins. A pitiful situation can stir up sympathy and sorrow, but it can just as easily provoke disgust and contempt. Railway guards chase her off the platform sometimes with words, sometimes with raised hands, and bringing them down on her face. In moments like those, she would return to her home, the only place that was hers. However, even within her own family, things weren't any better. Her father collects discarded scraps from dumpsters and alleyways, selling what he can to feed the family. For MAWA'S family, that wasn't just a number, it was food on the table, or the money to survive an entire month. But there have been times when what little he earned was taken from him by men who knew he had no way to fight back. To MAWA, going to school was never something promised, only something imagined, far out of reach. It means watching other children walk into school while waiting outside the gates, holding nothing but a quiet wish. She dreams of joining them, of sitting at a desk, of holding a pencil, of having a future. But in this part of Dhaka, dreams are often traded for survival. There are thousands of children like her across the city. Children born into hardship, growing up too fast, and fading from public view before they ever had a chance to be seen. This is the dark side of Dhaka, a reality you'll never find in Bangladeshi media or glossy travel magazines. Number 4. Who is eating this city? When conversations turn to what is damaging Dhaka, the answers come quickly and in many directions. Some blame overpopulation. Others criticize outdated infrastructure, unregulated development, or foreign demand. The list of causes grows longer, but the willingness to confront the truth grows smaller. Few dare to ask the more uncomfortable question of who is truly consuming this city from within. 3 of the city's most active industries, brick kilns, Leather tanning and textile dyeing continue to expand as the city races toward modernization. These sectors provide the materials that shape buildings, furnish shops, and supply global markets. But they also leave behind deep scars on the workers and the environment around them. Across the outskirts of Dhaka, brick kilns operate day and night, their chimneys constantly releasing thick smoke into the air. The ground is layered with soot, and nearby homes carry the same gray dust that fills every breath. In adjacent dyeing workshops, colored wastewater seeps across concrete floors. Workers wade through chemical runoff without gloves, their skin stained and irritated from long exposure to industrial dyes. In the tanning industry, the dangers are even more direct. Inside cramped sheds, teenage workers handle raw hides soaked in acid. There is no protective clothing, no proper ventilation, and little knowledge of the risks involved. 17-year-old Rakibul says the pain in his hands never fully fades. Every day he returns to the same chemical vats, knowing that the burn will begin within minutes. He works in silence like many others, earning just enough to get by, never enough to walk away. Factories like these operate without scrutiny, often just streets away from residential areas. They produce goods destined for foreign shelves, designed to be worn or sold in countries that may never see the cost behind each item. In the shadows of Dhaka's rapid growth, these industries thrive not despite the suffering they cause, but because that suffering remains unseen, unheard, and unspoken. Number 5. Buriganga, the Dead River. Once a symbol of life and movement, the Buriganga River now carries the weight of a city's decline. Stretching just over 27 kilometers, this narrow waterway winds through the southern and western edges of Dhaka. In earlier centuries, its strategic location made it vital to Bengal's prosperity. It was this river that helped persuade the Mughal Empire to choose Dhaka as a capital, connecting the city through a complex web of waterways that stretched across the region. The Buriganga begins at the Daliswari River near Kalatia, then moves quietly through the city before merging with the Turag at Kamrangir Char. For generations, it sustained trade-fed families and shaped communities along its banks. Boats once filled the water, carrying food goods and people. The current was strong, and so was its role in daily life. Today, the river carries a different weight. Thick, black, and heavy with pollution and neglect. Its surface is broken not by fish, but by floating bags, scraps of cloth, and chemical waste. The stench rises long before the river comes into sight. Except during the monsoon, the water no longer reflects light. It absorbs it, along with every trace of pollution poured into it. Near the riverbank, Islam prepares food for sale. His family has lived beside the Buriganga for generations. He still works here, pushing a metal cart along the narrow lanes, hoping to earn enough to get through the day. 20 years ago, the water was full of life, he says. Now people who bathe in this river often get rashes on their skin. Sometimes our eyes itch and burn. When pollution lasts long enough, people stop trying to fix it, they simply learn to live with it. Environmental groups have long pointed to the ready-made garment sector as one of the main sources of the damage. Bangladesh is now the world's second largest exporter of clothing. The industry has brought wealth to some, but the cost has been high. Wastewater from dyeing chemical runoff and factory discharge enters the Buriganga every day. Polythene and plastic trash clog its flow, changing the course of the water and the shape of the riverbed itself. With Earth Day approaching, the irony deepens. In Dhaka, environmental collapse is not a distant threat. It is visible, measurable, and already part of daily life. Number 6. INSAFETY in Dhaka. A megacity needs at least 30% of its land area to be dedicated to roads. In reality, the city has only around 7 to 8%. On the streets of Dhaka, traffic rules are treated more like suggestions than law. Rickshaws routinely cross into pedestrian zones, cutting through sidewalks and ignoring zebra crossings as they jockey for space. They weave in and out of the flow, often moving in the wrong direction on one-way streets, creating confusion and danger for everyone around. With an estimated 500,000 to 600,000 rickshaws in Dhaka alone, both pedal and battery-powered varieties crowd the roads. Drivers admit they frequently block traffic and flout regulations because everything can be managed on the road, as one senior rickshaw puller explained. That mindset, shared across vehicle types, reflects a broader lack of enforcement and a broken system where anyone with wheels can claim the street. Traffic congestion in Dhaka reaches extremes because footpaths are often swallowed by illegal parking and street vendors. With no safe place to walk, pedestrians are forced onto roads filled with moving vehicles, creating chaotic scenes where people cross at random spots and vehicles swerve dangerously to avoid them. Drivers of buses, CNG auto rickshaws, motorcycles, and private cars often ignore one-way rules and traffic signals, sometimes driving in violation with no apparent consequences. As a result, Dhaka's roads have become a daily hazard. In one recent period, at least 144 people lost their lives in traffic incidents in a single month, with road accidents linked directly to this lawlessness. Pedestrians and schoolchildren face daily risk as they negotiate streets where vehicles have priority over people. So every day you step outside in Dhaka, you're not just facing chromium pollution. You're facing danger that can hit at any moment, even if you're doing everything right and walking your righteously chosen path. Number 7. Two worlds in one city. If you think the dark side of Dhaka stops with pollution and unsafe streets, you are mistaken. There is a deeper layer of inequality, that doesn't fill the air, but sits quietly in how certain people are seen, heard, and treated. Among the most invisible are the sanitation workers whose labor keeps the city moving, but whose lives remain outside its concern. Each morning, they clean the streets before the first cars pass, sweeping away the night's waste with bare hands and minimal protection. Many come from marginalized castes or religious minorities, and that background continues to shape how the city treats them, not as essential workers, but as people who do not fully belong. With little notice and no compensation, their homes have been bulldozed by city authorities. Families lose everything in minutes. It takes only a few words from those in power for everything to be swept away, buried in silence dust, and decisions made far above. When they protest, the consequences are harsh. Witnesses describe police using force to break up gatherings, dragging people into trucks, striking them with batons, and silencing any form of resistance. Most cases are never investigated, and complaints vanish before they reach any court. The injustice is not limited to housing or violence. It is embedded in everyday interactions, in how people step aside when a sweeper passes in. The words muttered under breath in the disdainful glances and hesitancy a janitor makes when he or she wants to shake someone's hand. Life wears them down until they start to believe they deserve this. The truth, however, is that the failure doesn't come from them. It comes from a government that simply doesn't care. Number 8. Air purifier. In response to mounting pressure over Dhaka's hazardous air, city authorities recently announced a plan to install 50 public air purifiers in key locations across the capital. These machines are designed to remove fine particles and offer temporary relief in heavily polluted areas. Positioned at busy intersections and crowded squares, they are intended to create cleaner breathing zones for pedestrians and commuters. While the initiative has received attention in media briefings, many public health experts remain deeply skeptical. They argue that the machines, although visually striking, cannot come close to solving the structural causes of pollution in the city. Dhaka's toxic air is the result of long-standing issues that include emissions from unregulated factories, outdated vehicles, poorly managed construction sites, and a severe lack of green infrastructure. Some researchers have called the PURIFIER project an illusion of progress, an effort that looks effective from the outside but does little to confront the roots of the crisis. Clean air, they point out, cannot be boxed into small urban pockets or confined within a few blocks. It moves freely across districts and neighborhoods, impacting people regardless of where a machine is installed. There is growing concern that the benefits of this plan will fall once again to those already more protected. In affluent neighborhoods where traffic is better managed and tree cover is denser, these machines may serve as added comfort. However, for millions of people who live in overcrowded areas near brick kilns or industrial zones, the purifiers are unlikely to make any measurable difference. One local commented that those 50 machines wouldn't even be enough to clean the air inside his own home, let alone a city that lives in constant smog. A professor of environmental health in Dhaka questioned whether this project truly prioritizes those who suffer the most. He emphasized that the city needs regulation enforcement and investment in long-term change, not symbolic gestures that clean only the air directly in front of a lens. For now, the machines have not been installed, and no study has been released to prove their actual effectiveness. Until then, many wonder whether this is a meaningful step forward or just another polished distraction dressed up as public health. In a city choking every day, symbolic relief may no longer be enough. You might have come across this video and felt that it has nothing to do with you. But what if I told you that the reality unfolding in Bangladesh is far more connected to your everyday life than you might imagine? The clothes in your closet, the ones bought on sale, delivered quickly, worn casually, may have been sewn in factories just outside Dhaka. Bangladesh is one of the world's largest garment exporters, producing apparel for countless international brands. The garments are often affordable, easy to find, and constantly updated to match the latest trends. Behind this affordability, however, is a human cost that rarely makes it into advertising campaigns. Millions of workers spend long hours behind sewing machines in cramped, overheated rooms. They earn wages that barely support their families, and many face unsafe working conditions, verbal abuse, and the threat of losing their job if they speak up. Investigations have revealed that many workers do not end up in these factories by choice, but by necessity. With over 35 million people in Bangladesh living below the poverty line, options are limited. For countless families, the garment industry is not a stepping stone, but a lifeline, one of the few sources of income available, regardless of the risks involved. And when those workers try to change their conditions, the consequences can be severe. In 2024, 4 garment workers were killed by police during protests. Others lost their jobs simply for demanding fair pay. Organizing for better treatment often leads not to negotiation, but to intimidation, retaliation, and silence. Still, recognizing this truth does not mean turning away from the people of Bangladesh or refusing to buy what they make. The answer is not boycott, but awareness. What we need is to support the right brands, the ones that pay fair wages, enforce safety standards, and invest in the dignity of their workers. It means looking beyond the number of items on a rack or how low a price can go. It means asking different questions. Who made this? Under what conditions? And does this brand take responsibility? In a global economy, ethics begin with attention. The next time you hold a piece of clothing in your hands, remember that it carries more than fabric and thread. It carries a story, and you have the power to choose how that story continues. What you've seen is just one part of the dark side of Bangladesh, a reality hidden beneath fast-moving traffic factory walls and the haze that never lifts from the skies of Dhaka. This is life in the most polluted capital on Earth, where survival is shaped by smoke noise and a system that too often forgets the people who hold it up. We hope this journey didn't just inform you, we hope it made you feel something. Because stories like these deserve more than silence. They deserve to be seen, heard, and remembered. Don't forget to like and subscribe to NVL Travel Documentary so we can continue bringing you powerful stories from the hidden corners of our world.